If, like me, you were listening to Professor Chris Whitty, the Chief Medical Officer for the United Kingdom, on the news last night, you will realise that we're probably in for a very long lockdown. I'm sure, like me, you were hoping that this might be a short-term thing, but we are looking possibly at teaching online into the new year even. Quite a horrendous thought, but it just brings into sharp focus the need to try and sort out how we do this online teaching thing. I think there are a couple of things that I want to address. One is the considerable amount of feedback I got from that first video, where I extolled the virtues of Source Connect now as a way of getting good audio for online teaching. And the second is to react to the experiences I have now had, having given a considerably larger number of online lessons than I had at the time of making the first video. Of course, my students, who I normally teach in London or Manchester, have scattered all around the world, a lot of them back to the Far East and some in Europe, and a few, of course, have stayed in homes in London or around Manchester. But it means that the geographical spread and the sheer variety of different circumstances have posed some very substantial challenges. We simply don't live in that ideal world where everyone has good equipment and good broadband connections, and so it's a big case of trying to optimize everything. And so the main thrust of this video is to talk about optimizing the broadband, and also the second main thing is trying to find ways of getting the students to actually test their equipment before the lesson. Okay, so first of all, I must say a little bit more about Source Connect. The most common inquiry I've had about this platform is how to find it. There is actually a link in the first video, but it is buried in one of the comments underneath. I will make sure that there is a link in the description under this video. The parent company, which I believe is called Source Elements, has produced a number of products and understandably tries to steer people away from the Source Connect Now and Source Meet platforms, which are free, towards the monthly subscription platforms. They also have some platforms which involve one-off very substantial payments. I think one of them is over £1,000, well over £1,000, but that's a sort of like a lifetime membership of it. Yeah. In principle, I have nothing against the idea of paying a subscription for the ideal platform for music teaching. It just happens to be the case that at the moment the free offerings are superior. To the best of my knowledge, Source Connect Now still offers the best free audio for music, streaming up to 512 kilobits per second with a codecs designed for music. The downside is that you have to wear headphones, and I think this is a small price to pay for being able to hear tonal nuances and dynamics. And yes, it is convenient to have a platform which integrates video and audio, and you can find this on Source Connect Meet. But the audio, even in headphones mode, is still not as good as Source Connect Now. So, as described in my first video, a combination of Source Connect Now and any pretty much normal video sort of conferencing platform, FaceTime, Google Hangouts, Microsoft Teams. I mean, there are just an enormous number. They're all much of a muchness in that they mostly have speech codexes, but you can just mute the sound in those connections and use the video from that whilst keeping a separate audio stream of high quality for Source Connect Now. So I described that in greater detail on the first video, so I don't want to go through that now. But the main purpose of this video, as I said, is to address the real world issues that come up when so few people are actually prepared for online teaching. Okay, the quality of the broadband connection. I've been surprised by how many of my students and colleagues are aware of the limitations of Wi-Fi. Some of you Well, for some of you, the following may be blindingly obvious, but not everyone is that interested in tech, and on a day-to-day basis, wireless is extremely convenient. However, as the following screenshots of internet speed on my phone demonstrate, distance from the router, from the source of the Wi-Fi, can radically affect the speed of the connection. The first picture screenshot was taken quite close to the router on the ground floor, and the second was actually checking the 4G speed that I can get where I live, and the third one was upstairs just one floor away, and the fourth one was from the loft. And you can see there is quite a marked deterioration there as you get further away from the router. Obvious perhaps, but surprising how many people don't take that into account when they are setting up their equipment, and their piano, particularly if the piano teachers, is in a different room from where the internet comes into the house and where the router is usually situated. Of course, some people live in accommodation where they have Wi-Fi but they don't have a router. There are sort of communal things for students where they don't get to have a router. And some people, of course, have very sophisticated setups where they have a sort of networking device on top of the router that they have. So those sorts of people are probably techie enough to understand how to optimize their broadband. And then I checked the speed of my internet on the PC in the room in which I teach, which is just the other side of the house. It's still on the same floor, but it's just across the other side of a hallway. And I compared it to the speed that can be achieved with using Ethernet direct from the router. Now, ugly though this cable undoubtedly is, trailing through my living room and the hall to my music room, it gives the best connection to the internet, and by a factor of 10 in fact, and it's what I use whilst teaching online. And this is therefore what I recommend to all my students that have access to a router: buy a sufficient length of Ethernet and connect directly. I'm going to put a link at the bottom to some, just randomly to a store that will sell any length of Ethernet cable that you require, pretty much. And if there is a real reason why a long cable trailing through multiple rooms is not acceptable, there is some wonderful Powerline technology, TP-Link and Netgear spring to mind, and that would also be preferable to Wi-Fi. Though again, you can just check the speed. That's you can always do that. And a lot of modern laptops do not actually have Ethernet ports, but again, you can buy adapters for USB-C and Thunderbolt ports, so you can still make that Ethernet connection. Most things are possible, and I've included some links to that useful equipment below. Some of my students do not have a PC or Mac with them and have to make do with a smartphone, and some live in areas where the internet is very weak and the 4G signal is poor. But the main thing is to find the best connection you can. I noticed that Source Connect now works on Android phones, and Source Connect Meet works on certain iPads as well as all the usual stuff. And I think what we're trying to avoid is the lesson where the signal is continually failing and the connection breaks and much time is spent reconnecting and worrying about settings. And it's not always obvious how these platforms work, which is why I made the first video. But even if you do know, unexpected things can go wrong. The camera might decide it is unavailable, or you have invested in a lovely external microphone only to find that the platform does not give you the option to use it. I'm pretty sure that most of these issues can be resolved, and I try to encourage my students to test their connections and equipment with each other before attempting to have a lesson. It really is a shame to waste a significant chunk of a lesson trying to work out why the sound is poor or the camera doesn't work. Sometimes it can just be that someone's put the microphone too close to the instrument or hasn't got the gain setting on the microphone correct. And if the microphone doesn't have a gain setting, then there's absolutely always a possibility to change that in the settings in the PC. And you begin to get a sense of why this is difficult, because all these sort of platforms and computers and have slightly different individual things. There's no way I can do a universal guide, but just rest assured it is possible to change these settings. So in the last resort, you can always make audio recordings and send those for the teacher to listen to. Now, I've seen a great deal of good advice on the websites of the institutions at which I teach, and I don't intend to duplicate that here. I will finish, therefore, with repeating the two main points. Firstly, optimize your internet connection in the ways I've described, and secondly, get the students to test with each other before the lesson. One of the features that I like very much is that you can test your broadcast before you connect to someone else. So as you see, I just pressed the record button on my grid on Source Connect now, and I can play a little bit. And then I can play something contrasting. And then I can play it back and see what the sound is like. So I stop the recording. I then select the recording and then click on the play. One of the features that I like very much is that you can test your broadcast before you connect to someone else. So as you see, I just press the record button on my grid on Source Connect now, and I can play a bit. And then I can play something contrasting. So that's it. I hope this was of some use, and if you like the video, please subscribe. I'm desperately trying to get up to 1,000 views, and I might actually be able to monetize my videos over the last however many years I've been posting stuff. Thank you very much. Bye bye.